today I wanted to teach you a little bit about a specific type of therapy. Now this cognitive behavioral therapy has been pretty popular within the last couple decades, I'd say. It's well liked because it's pretty easy to do research on. It can be really, really brief, or you can be something you can continue to work on for a long time. And because it's been proven in research trials to work pretty well, insurance companies also really like it. And so if you are looking for a therapist, you're likely to find a lot of therapists who are at least knowledgeable about cognitive behavioral therapy. And I mean, I'm also mostly talking in the West. That would be in America, in Western countries in general. I don't necessarily want to generalize this to other parts of the world, but at least in the West, cognitive behavioral therapy is very well liked and utilized not only in psychotherapy, but also in a lot of self-help sort of like books and resources and stuff like that. So I thought that I would teach you guys a little bit about just some of the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy and some bits that you guys can just sort of use to think about yourself and think about the way your own brain works and see if this makes sense to you. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy looks at, basic theory is that your thoughts influence your feelings, and your feelings influence your behaviors. And then your behaviors influence the world around you, and that influences, in turn, your thoughts. And these lead to a set of core beliefs about yourself, others, and the future. And cognitive behavioral therapy works about these core beliefs and about these thoughts that lead to negative beliefs and maladaptive behaviors. These types of thoughts are generally called cognitive distortions, although I've also heard it called other things. I've largely heard it called faulty thinking. I've also heard it called automatic negative thoughts, which I like a little bit better than faulty thinking because it doesn't quite blame you. It's not saying your thinking is faulty. The thoughts are automatic and they're negative. They're not necessarily faulty. It's not your fault, I guess, for having these thoughts because they're automatic, you see. And the other thing I like about that is automatic negative thoughts for kids can be called ants. And one of my coworkers mentioned this to me. There are books about these automatic negative thoughts for kids that talk about them being like ants. You know, like if you can imagine, if you've ever woken up and found ants in your kitchen, maybe one day you just see one. You don't think much of it. And then you'll see a couple over here and you'll clean it up. And then the next morning there's a whole ton of them and you have no idea where they came from, but it started with just a few and suddenly they're everywhere. And that's a little bit about like how automatic negative thoughts can be for some people. Like you have a few of them and they start popping up and then there are more and more and it's just easier to have so many of them. And that's how many people become depressed or anxious and deal with these sorts of depression and anxiety are two huge issues with mental health and are both work really well with cognitive behavioral therapy because it directly targets those thoughts, those sort of self-doubting thoughts that you might have that make you feel anxious or depressed. So, and then the other thing I've heard these thoughts called, just any sort of negative thoughts around mental illness in general, I've heard them called bad brains, which I also really like because you can sort of, I've heard like the bad brains referred to as a noun, like it's not you, it's the bad brains. The bad brains are telling me this. And it's sort of, it externalizes it. In the same way that if someone has a disease, then you'll say it's the disease, it's not them. In the same way with mental health concerns, it's the bad brains, it's not them. So I wrote a list of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, well, over 10. There are subtypes of some of them. But somewhere between 10 and 15 types of these cognitive distortions that I plan on teaching you guys about today. And these are largely going to be concepts I feel like that you guys are familiar with. Some of them you may have words for, others you may not. So, but generally I don't think a lot of this will be necessarily new. It's just referring to them as cognitive distortions puts it in a little bit of a new light. So, the first one is overgeneralizations. Now, this is a pretty common one. An example of this is after a breakup, someone might say, "I'll never love again," or "nobody likes me." It can be either an overgeneralization about the future, like I said, "I'll never love again," because I feel this way now, it's never going to happen. The future is always going to be like it is now. Or "nobody likes me. Because this person doesn't like me, nobody must like me." You know, the thing that applies here applies everywhere, or the thing that applies now applies in the future. That's overgeneralization. The next one is called all or nothing, or all or none thinking, or splitting. Sometimes it's called black and white thinking, but basically it's sort of like if you didn't get an A on the test, then you basically failed, you know. It's that sort of like you either did well or you did badly, and there's no gray area. There's no you did kind of okay. There's no, you know, it wasn't my best, but it's not that bad. You know, at least I passed. There's none of that. It's I didn't get an A, so I basically failed. Or you know, I'm not getting all A's, so I am a bad student, for example. That's another one. And if you hear words like always and never, like this always happens to me, never do the dishes, that's also all or none thinking. Number 3 is disqualifying the positive. So when something good happens to you, you know, if someone compliments you, you might say, "Oh, they're just being nice," you know. That's not actually true. They're just being nice to me. If someone, say, says, "Oh, you know, I like what you're wearing," they're like, "Oh, they were just being nice." Or, you know, the waiter just wanted a tip. Or, if something good happens to you based on something you've done, "Oh, it's just a coincidence," you know. I didn't have anything to do with it. Or, you know, I didn't have an increase in sales. It's just more people were coming in who wanted to buy stuff. You know, it wasn't that I'm a good salesman, but more people were coming in, they want to buy stuff. It has nothing to do with my skill. So, disqualifying anything that could say good things about you. So a lot of these distortions not only involve assuming bad things are happening, but sort of brushing aside any good things. And a lot of these, you'll notice a sort of reverse happening with other people. So with the disqualifying the positive, if it had been during someone else's, you know, like say it was your friend who was complimented on what they were wearing or how they look, then you wouldn't be saying, "Oh, the waiter was just being nice." You would be saying, "Oh yeah, no, you're so well put together, you're gorgeous, you're lovely." You know, you would be saying all these nice things about them. But if it's said to you, then you say, "Oh, they're just being nice, it's nothing." And this is classic patterns of depressive thinking. Alright, so number 4 is another pretty common one, jumping to conclusions. So the trope of a partner, and if your partner's out late and you assume, oh, they're cheating on me, they're not home on time, so they're cheating on me. There's a huge gap between point A and point B. And there are a couple of subtypes of this. So one subtype would be mind reading, which is basically what it sounds. You're assuming you know what the other person's thinking. You're assuming someone else doesn't like you, or you might assume someone else's opinions. I've noticed this when writing persuasive essays. If you're assuming what the other person's thoughts are as you're writing the essay, like if you're writing a paper and you're assuming, say you're writing a book report and you're assuming the other person has read the book, or if you're doing a talk and you're assuming that your audience feels a certain way, that involves mind reading. And to an extent in writing a paper or doing a presentation, to an extent that's acceptable because you need to know your audience. But with a one-on-one conversation, if you're debating with someone and you don't actually know how they feel, you're just assuming how they feel, that's not so much a good idea. And even more so if you're assuming things about how they see you, You're assuming that they see you as incompetent, or you're assuming that they don't like you, and that may not be the case. And that affects how you think about yourself too, because if you think that they think you're incompetent, then you're going to think you're incompetent. So the second type is fortune telling. So telling yourself, oh, I'm going to fail this test. I'm going to fail the test. I'm not prepared. I've studied a lot, but I don't feel prepared, and I'm going to fail the test. And that leads to classic cases of self-sabotage, because you tell yourself you're going to fail. You might not study as hard, or you might not sleep well that night, or you might be so anxious during the test that you don't realize that you missed a couple of answers, or that you started bubbling in on number 2, and you don't realize until you're bubbling in answer 100 in slot number 101. So, fortune telling in particular tends to lead to cases of self-sabotage because of the way that it works. But, that one's another particularly deadly one. So then there's also magnification and minimization, which is another classic example of it works one way when you're thinking about yourself and the opposite way when you're thinking about other people. So I'll give you a couple examples. Magnification is when you're thinking about your own sort of depressive thoughts. It's like one small thing becomes the end of the world. If you've ever seen people talk about how, okay, I'm going to fail this test, and then I'm going to fail this class, and then I'm going to have to drop out of college, and if I don't get my college degree, there's no way I'm going to get a job, and if there's no way I'm going to get a job, then there's no way I'm going to get money, and if there's no way I get money, then there's no way for me to survive, and I'm just basically going to become homeless and die of starvation because I didn't pass this test. When really it's just your typical, Friday spelling test or whatever. Magnification is the making mountains out of molehills. One subtype of this is catastrophizing. So catastrophizing is something horrible is going to happen if I do this. If I learn to drive, I'm just going to be a horrible driver, and I'm going to get into a car accident. That's what's going to happen. So I shouldn't learn how to drive, not yet. And then minimization is the opposite, but you're looking at positive thing and you're minimizing it. So yeah, sure, I have 10 years of job experience, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. I mean, I'm still not sure if I'm going to get this job or not. even if I have more job experience than they require. Even if I'm probably, if anything, overqualified, no, it's not going to make a difference. I don't think I'm going to get the job, And like I said, it's the reverse if you're talking about other people. Because if you were talking to your best friend about this job that they're trying to get, then you would be telling them, look, you have 10 years of job experience. They would be insane to not give you this job. Job experience makes all the difference. That's what you'd be saying. But you'd be, magnifying it. Job experience is the only thing that matters, and you're going to get this job. Versus if it's you, it doesn't make any difference. I have no idea if I'm going to get this job. Minimization is what you would do with your friend with something negative. Oh, it's only one test. It's okay. You'll do better on the next one. You're normally really good at this subject. You don't have to worry about it. Versus, if I fail this test, I might as well drop out of college. Okay, so let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was 6. Number 7 is emotional reasoning. So that's, I feel a certain way, and therefore that says something about the world around me. And that's not necessarily the case. And sometimes this is just, I feel this way, therefore this is a quality I have. So, I got a question wrong in front of the class. I now feel stupid, therefore I must be stupid. But really, you just feel stupid in that moment. Doesn't mean you are stupid. This can reinforce phobias. I feel afraid, therefore it's dangerous. It says something about the state of the thing and not about your fear. Or I feel overwhelmed, therefore it's hopeless. So again, saying a thing about the state of the thing instead of your own fear. This can also be the case with people. I feel intimidated, therefore you are, strict. If it's a teacher, for example. A really strict professor could just be really intimidating, Everyone could get A's in their class, but if they have this stern sort of look to them and you feel intimidated, then you could say, oh, that's a really strict professor. But maybe everyone gets an A in their class. It might just be the way you feel about it, not a fact of the thing itself. Okay, so next is labeling. Labeling is the classic case of calling someone a jerk for saying something mean when it might be that they were having a bad day. Or saying, I'm such a loser because maybe you lost a game of chess. But maybe you're normally pretty good at chess. Or, hey, maybe chess just isn't your game and you suck at chess, but you are so good at Scrabble. But every time you play chess, it makes you feel like a loser because it's not the game you're good at. It doesn't make you a loser because you're still really good at Scrabble. It's not the greatest example, but you get what I mean. If you label a thing based off of a small amount of evidence, the label might not actually fit. Next is personalization. So personalization is a little bit like labeling, but it usually applies to things that aren't necessarily your fault. So one example of this is a lot of parents will feel that they're a bad parent if their kid gets a bad grade or does something wrong or throws a tantrum. It's all, oh, I'm such a bad parent. The littlest thing. I'm a bad parent. I should have pushed him to study more. I should have signed him up for more classes. I should have done whatever. And that transitions quite nicely into the next one, which is should statements. Because should statements are a cognitive distortion because they basically center around the idea of this is the way things should be. So should, this is how something should be. it must be this way, shoulds, musts, etc. Other words that can be replaced with those. But think to yourself, who says it should be that way? Because sometimes we get our shoulds from other people's shoulds. So, and that's the case with a lot of these, but with shoulds in particular, this is how this dish should be made. Who says that? Well, that's the way my mother always made it. Okay, so maybe it's okay if we have a little bit less salt than the recipe calls for. Maybe it's okay if, I don't know, the brown sugar to white sugar ratio is a little bit off. And the last one is filtering. This is a pretty common thread in all of these, but focusing only on negative comments. Anyone who has talked about making YouTube videos knows this with the comment section, but filtering, if you look at the list of the comments, if I get 5 comments on a video and 1 comment says something bad, it can be really hard to not just look at that 1 comment, Or if in all of the videos I did past year, one of them had a lot of complaints, the others could be great, but that one, it's hard to not just think about that. In general, with feedback, filtering makes getting feedback hard. That's why oftentimes they tell you if you're going to give constructive criticism, you say something nice, and then you give your criticism, and then you end with something also nice, just to make it a little bit easier to digest, which is all well and good. That can be really helpful, especially if you are talking to someone who you know has a brain that sort of works like this. But in general, filtering can be a big problem with a lot of people. And in fact, a lot of the examples that I gave you are just common everyday, feeling stressed out about taking a test or feeling worried if someone likes you. And to some extent, these are pretty common concerns. But the point at which it makes it hard for you to live your life, the point at which it's hard for you to make friends because you're constantly worried about if people will like you or not, the point at which you are doing horribly on tests even though you do well in all of your other assignments because you have so much test anxiety, that's the point at which it becomes important to sit and think, what can I do to make this better? And if these cognitive distortions are things that you felt like you can relate to a lot, like, yes, that sounds like me, I know that, how do I fix this? There are self-help resources available, of course, but if you are in a situation where you are able to find a therapist, finding a cognitive behavioral therapist could be a really good move if you feel like this is all stuff that makes sense to you, and particularly if you want to learn more. A lot of cognitive behavioral therapy can involve psychoeducation, can involve teaching you how to work on your own brain. And if this is something you want to learn about, finding a cognitive behavioral therapist and actively working on fixing your thought patterns and fixing your own cognitive distortions, can be one of the biggest things that can help you, because you can learn and grow as a human being out of all of it. So, cognitive behavioral therapy. Let me know, for those of you who do know stuff about cognitive behavioral therapy, let me know what you think about it. If you've been in therapy and have gone under, cognitive behavioral therapy, and you are willing to talk about it, I would love to hear from you. So please leave a comment below. And if not, even if you have no idea about any of this until you watch this video, let me know something you got out of it. Let me know if you connected with anything in particular. I feel like most people have at least one of these that might make them think, oh, I do that a lot. I know the filtering thing is definitely something I do. It's hard for me sometimes to focus on the positive of a situation, or minimization is the other thing that I do a lot of. Sometimes I need to be reminded of the ways that I impact the world in good ways. So that's just me personally. Let me know what you could relate to and what you learned, and I'll see you guys next time.